There was a time when I could close my eyes at 10 and not stir till the sun rose. No dreams, no restlessness. Just deep, peaceful sleep. But something changed after I turned 70. I'd find myself staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning, wondering why my body no longer followed the rhythm it once knew. And I realized I'm not alone. If you're over 65 or you love someone who is, chances are sleep has become more complicated. It's not just age catching up. It's the body, the mind, sending signals we often ignore. In this episode of Elderly Reflections, we'll explore how aging truly affects our sleep patterns. Why falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking too early isn't just random. We'll share stories from seniors across Europe and America, backed by science and lived experience. So if sleep has started slipping away like sand through your fingers, stay with me. There's wisdom here, elderly wisdom, and maybe, just maybe, a way to rest again. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss these gentle but important life lessons from the elderly. You know, when I was a young man, sleep was never something I thought much about. It just happened. I'd work all day, come home, have dinner, and when it was time for bed, I'd lie down, close my eyes and drift off. I'd sleep through storms, noisy neighbors. You name it, my body knew how to rest. And I trusted it. But something changed after I turned 70. It wasn't sudden, it crept up, night by night. I started waking up at 2 in the morning. Not just once, it became a routine. I'd toss, turn, sometimes even get up and walk to the kitchen just to feel like I had something to do. The silence of the night stopped being peaceful. It became a reminder that something inside me had shifted. I know I'm not alone. Over the past few years, I've talked to many men and women in their 70s and 80s, seniors from Boston to Berlin, each with their own version of this story. Margaret from Ontario told me she hasn't had a full night's sleep since her 68th birthday. Robert in Manchester says he wakes up 5 times a night to use the bathroom and never feels truly rested. These aren't isolated incidents, they're reflections. Elderly reflections of what aging does to our bodies, especially our ability to sleep. Now here's something we often overlook. Sleep is not just a passive activity. It's a critical function. It restores the brain, repairs the body, balances hormones, and protects the heart. And yet, as we grow older, our sleep becomes lighter, shorter, and more fragmented. That's not a failure on our part. It's biology. Research from the Sleep Foundation and institutions like Harvard Medical School confirms that as we age, we spend less time in deep sleep, the kind that leaves you feeling truly rested. Instead, our nights become a patchwork of drifting in and out of lighter stages, making us more vulnerable to every little noise, every bit of discomfort. One major reason for this change is melatonin. It's the hormone our brain produces in the evening, telling the body it's time to rest. But after 60, melatonin levels drop significantly. That's why many seniors lie in bed staring at the ceiling, even when they feel tired. The signal just isn't strong enough. And then there's the circadian rhythm, our internal clock. With age, it shifts forward. That means you feel sleepy earlier in the evening and tend to wake up earlier in the morning. It's not a problem if you adjust your life accordingly. But if you still try to keep your old schedule, it can feel like you're constantly out of sync. Tired when you're supposed to be awake, alert when you're supposed to sleep. Now let's talk about health. Because let's face it, after 65, most of us are managing a few conditions. Arthritis, chronic pain, prostate issues, heart problems, they all come knocking eventually. And they all mess with our sleep. Pain wakes you up. The need to urinate wakes you up. Sometimes, even medications designed to help can have side effects that keep you restless at night. A study in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine found that nearly half of adults over 65 suffer from at least one sleep disorder. That's not a small number. But here's the part I want you to remember. Just because sleep gets harder doesn't mean you're doomed to spend your night staring at the ceiling. I've met people in their 70s and 80s who found peace again, who've rebuilt their relationship with sleep. Not through magic pills or complicated routines, but through small, thoughtful changes. Maintaining a consistent sleep schedule, avoiding heavy meals and caffeine late in the day, dimming the lights in the evening to mimic sunset, giving your brain the signal that night is coming. These aren't tricks, they're respect for your body's new rhythm. There's a man named Henry, 81 years old, living in Colorado, used to be a truck driver, hardworking, proud, stubborn as a mule. But when sleep started failing him, he didn't give in to frustration. He started walking every afternoon, eating dinner at the same time, shutting off the TV an hour before bed, and listening to soft jazz instead. He said something to me I'll never forget. You gotta teach your body how to rest again. You can't yell at it. You gotta guide it like you would a tired horse. Now that we understand sleep changes with age, let's go deeper. Because the truth is, aging doesn't just change how we sleep. It changes why we sleep the way we do. And most people don't even realize how many layers there are. It's like peeling back an onion, each layer revealing something more personal, more delicate. One of the biggest culprits of poor sleep in seniors is pain. Not the kind of sharp, sudden pain that makes you wince. I'm talking about that slow, dull, nagging pain that sits in your joints, your back, your hips. The kind that shows up when the world gets quiet. Arthritis, sciatica, neuropathy, they don't go away when the sun goes down. In fact, they get louder when your mind stops being busy. I spoke to Teresa, a retired librarian from Minnesota, who said she dreads bedtime. Not because she doesn't want to sleep, but because when her knees start to throb, she's tried different mattresses, pain creams, even meditation. But some nights the pain still wins. And the more you wake up because of pain, the more anxious you become about falling asleep the next night. It becomes a cycle, a loop of exhaustion and fear. That anxiety is another invisible thief of sleep. As we age, many of us start to worry more about health, money, losing independence, or simply about what tomorrow will bring. Our minds, once able to tune out at night, now race through scenarios. What if I fall again? What if my medication stops working? Will I remember my appointments next week? It doesn't matter if the thoughts are irrational or not. At 2 in the morning, every worry feels like a mountain. And that kind of mental noise keeps your brain in a state of alertness, even when your body is begging for rest. Then there's loneliness. It's not talked about enough, but it's there, lingering in the quiet hours, especially for seniors who've lost a spouse or who live alone. Nights used to mean companionship, conversation, shared blankets. Now for many, night means silence. Too much of it. A study from the University of Chicago found that lonely seniors experience more sleep fragmentation than those who feel socially connected. It's not just emotional, it's biological. Human beings are wired to feel safer when they're connected to others. When we're not, even our nervous system stays slightly more alert, just in case. So even if you do sleep, your body doesn't rest deeply. And let's not forget medications. Most seniors are on at least 3 prescriptions. Some are life-saving, others are necessary but come with trade-offs. Blood pressure pills, antidepressants, corticosteroids, and even common over-the-counter painkillers can all interfere with sleep. They either keep you awake, cause vivid dreams, or disrupt your natural sleep stages. I remember Harold, a 79-year-old retired Navy mechanic, telling me he'd sleep like a log until he started a new heart medication. Then suddenly he'd wake up sweating, confused, sometimes even with his heart racing. It wasn't nightmares, it was side effects. It took months before his doctor found a better fit. Imagine how many other seniors never bring it up, thinking it's just part of aging. But it's not always aging. Sometimes it's chemistry. Another cause people don't talk about enough is sleep apnea. It's common in older adults, especially men, but often goes undiagnosed. You fall asleep, start snoring, and then, without realizing it, your breathing pauses for a few seconds. Then you gasp and wake, sometimes fully, sometimes partially. But your brain gets jolted. It happens over and over all night, and the result? You wake up feeling like you barely slept. Sleep apnea isn't just about snoring. It's linked to heart disease, stroke, and memory problems. If you or your partner notices loud snoring, choking sounds, or frequent awakenings, it's worth bringing up with your doctor. There's treatment available: CPAP machines, dental devices, lifestyle changes. It's not just about comfort, it's about saving your life. Speaking of lifestyle, let's talk about habits. Because let's be honest, some of us develop routines that don't help us sleep. We nap too long in the afternoon. We drink coffee after 3 p.m. We watch TV in bed, hoping it will distract the mind, but instead it stimulates it. And don't get me started on those bright phone screens that trick the brain into thinking it's still daylight. These habits seem small, but they add up. There's wisdom in listening to your body. Your body wants rhythm, it wants predictability. Eat meals at the same time, go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time. It sounds simple, but for seniors, that structure can be the difference between a restful night and a restless one. I knew a couple in Oregon, both in their 80s, who set an old-fashioned alarm clock not to wake them up, but to remind them when it was time to start winding down. They'd dim the lights, turn on classical music, and play a short game of cards to slow the mind. They called it their evening landing. I thought that was beautiful. and effective. What we haven't talked about yet is the emotional toll. Because when you don't sleep, everything else becomes harder. Your mood shifts. You feel more irritable, less patient, you forget things. You lose motivation to cook, walk, even socialize. Sleep isn't just a physical need, it's the foundation of well-being. And yet many seniors treat poor sleep like a badge of honor. I'm just used to it, they say. Or worse, it's part of getting old. But it doesn't have to be, not entirely. You can't reverse age, but you can adjust. You can listen, you can find your new rhythm. One of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard came from a 93-year-old woman named Evelyn. She said, "Sleep after 70 is like a guest. You have to prepare the room, make it feel welcome. Then it might stay the night." That, to me, is elderly wisdom. Sleep is not lost, it's just changed. And if we treat it with care, it will still come back to us. Let me tell you something I've come to believe. Solutions don't always come from science alone. Sometimes they come from stories. From sitting across a kitchen table with someone who's been through the same sleepless nights and come out the other side. That's what I want to share with you now. Not just the reasons we struggle to sleep as we get older, but the real-life ways some of us have found to rest again. Take Walter, for instance. He's 76, lives in Ohio, and used to work in steel fabrication. Tough guy, barely took sick days in 40 years. But after retirement, he started waking up every 2 hours. At first, he ignored it, said, "I'm just getting old." But one night he got so frustrated, he stood outside in the cold at 3 a.m., just staring at the sky. That night, something shifted. The next day, he started journaling, not just thoughts or memories, but specifically how he felt after each night. When he went to bed, what he ate, if he napped, what his dreams were like. He told me after 2 weeks a pattern appeared. Caffeine at 4 p.m., awake till midnight, no walk that day, tossing and turning. Once he saw it on paper, sleep stopped being a mystery, it became a project. He adjusted slowly, stopped coffee after lunch, took walks every morning, swapped evening TV for reading. Within 3 months, he said his body learned how to trust night again. Not perfectly, but better. That's elderly wisdom. Learn your own rhythm and respect it. Then there's Evelyn. I mentioned her before. 93 years old, still lives alone in upstate New York. Her secret? Ritual. She treats bedtime like preparing a sacred space. Every night at 8:30 sharp, she begins her wind-down routine. Warm herbal tea, classical music, Debussy or Chopin. No screens, no calls. She rubs lavender oil on her wrists and lights a small candle. She told me, "I don't just go to sleep. I invite sleep in." That phrase stuck with me. Invite sleep in. She said it took years to build that ritual, but now her body responds to it like clockwork. No medication, no gadgets, just consistency. She's lived through world wars, heartbreaks, and long winters. And yet, her peace comes in the smallest, quietest hour of the day. That's not routine, that's wisdom. Another story comes from Robert and Joan, married 52 years living in southern England. They struggled with sleep in very different ways. He snored. She couldn't stay asleep past 3 a.m. But instead of sleeping separately, they decided to change how they approached the night together. First, they started doing light yoga before bed. Nothing fancy, just stresses side by side with soft music. Then they made their room cooler. Scientists say 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit is ideal for sleep. And they said it made a huge difference. But here's what really struck me. They began each night by holding hands for a few minutes in silence. No words, just presence. Robert said it reminded us we were safe. And with that sense of safety, they started sleeping better. Not just physically, but emotionally too. Now, some folks do need a little help beyond habit. Let's not ignore that. But not all help has to come from pills. Some seniors I've met swear by light therapy, using special lamps in the morning to reset their circadian rhythm. Others use weighted blankets to feel grounded at night. Some use guided meditation apps made for older adults, voices that lead them gently into sleep without overstimulation. One gentleman, Charles from Toronto, told me he listens to recordings of rain mixed with slow piano music. "Feels like the world is tucking me in," he said. That's what I mean when I say it's not one solution. It's finding your own doorway back into rest. And sometimes the solution is acceptance. There was a woman named Alma, 84, who told me something I'll never forget. She said, "When I stopped trying to force sleep, it came easier." She stopped looking at the clock. She stopped worrying about how many hours she was getting. Instead, she gave herself permission to rest in pieces. 2 hours here, an hour there. A nap in the afternoon? I stopped chasing the sleep I had at 40. She said, and I made peace with the rest my 84-year-old body needed. That's a life lesson from the elderly if I've ever heard one. We don't need the sleep we used to have. We need the rest that works for who we are now. So maybe you don't sleep like you used to. Maybe the nights feel longer than they should. That's okay. Aging changes us, but it also teaches us. We learn to listen to the body, to find peace and stillness, and to honor the rhythms we once took for granted. What matters most now isn't chasing 8 hours like a prize. It's finding rest that nourishes your spirit, calms your mind, and helps you greet the day with just a little more strength. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you. You've taken time for yourself, for your senior health, your peace, and your elderly wisdom. That's not just smart, that's brave. I invite you to like this video, share it with someone who might be struggling, and subscribe for more life lessons. From the elderly here, we don't just talk about aging, we reflect on it with grace, honesty, and maybe a little hope. Now, I've got one question for you before you go. You're watching from where? Let me know in the comments below. I read every one,